Hey guys, so hello, welcome to our third webinar. Thank you for joining myself and Michael Finicario for episode 3.
Episode 3.
In the cloud and not to crowd. So in episode 2, we spoke about some of the misconceptions many people have when thinking about moving to the cloud, and I hope Fino was able to sort of quash some of those for you. And today we're going to discuss the benefits and advantages of moving to the cloud and sort of looking to the future of PLM. So we're going to go on to, we're actually going to go into a poll to begin with. And what do you guys think are the top benefits for PLM in the cloud? So we're just going to pop that up for you. If you can vote on that. Got a few people voting in already. Fantastic. Quite a mix now. It's good. Just go for a couple more answers.
People answering, maybe you are. I'm on these.
Yeah, well,
I guess you can show me the results when they're ready.
Yeah. Let's go ahead. So it seems as though supply chain,
interesting.
Flexible pricing models seem to be the biggest.
No fair, Nikolai, voting for that one. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, unfortunately, we're going to cover all of those, right? So.
Exactly. So we'll we're going to kick off firstly, and we're going to talk about social enterprise within the PLM and cloud. So if you give us some info, Fino, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so I think that one of the first benefits that the cloud is giving us is just this new outlook on interacting with users and user experiences. And since we're in the area of COVID where we don't have meeting rooms and we're working remotely and we're using remote teams, then I think that most of the PLM platforms are trying to adapt some kind of a social enterprise add-on, because remember PLM started as just 2D and 3D objects, and then became a data management tool, then became an enterprise data management tool. And now I think PLM is evolving towards also a social enterprise tool for everything doing with product development, in order to keep that collaboration in a digital twin and continuity with the digital thread, which we'll talk about later. I highlighted here the experience platform from Dassault Systems, which I know well because I worked there for launch it. In the middle, you see one of the first blocks there. They have an app that's built into the platform. It comes with the base price. It's called 3D Swim. So you can create communities, you can do blogs, you can share specs with anybody in the community, whether they're technical or non-technical. The platform also has an optional module called NetBuys, where you can do web research and check on, even do sentiment analysis and seeing as you're testing ideas, which ones are touching the market even better. For non-technical users, the ones that can't deal with looking at a CATIA or a Pro-E or an NX screen, sorry, Creo or NX screen, the platform also provides a lightweight viewer called 3D Play. So you see that someone in marketing could still look at the glasses and say whether they like the design or not. And then lastly, there's also an integration for messaging. You can check colleagues and so forth without having to jump out into another tool. So that's the way Dassault does it. I think the other platforms are a little slower to adopt these kinds of things, but there are, to some degree or another, things like that. And I think it's one of the benefits of cloud, because this was not that easy to do when you were dealing with on-premises software. And at the same time, I think that as we're moving to cloud, we're adopting new technologies anyway and new ways of doing things. And so social enterprise is one of those things where the change goes both ways. It's improving the experience for the user, but it's also forcing the PLM vendors to reevaluate how they do software to improve the experience for their users.
Okay, fantastic. And the next bit we're going to talk about, the second point was hybrid cloud. remote workers?
Right. Well, I think that's another thing. So on the left side, you see kind of the classic use case, which is already being used by users of Onshape or Shaper, Xdesign, where the PLM is in the cloud, and I've got a CAD user doing design on the cloud. That's not, so I'd say that that's a pretty obvious case where that way you don't have to have someone in an office. They can be anywhere on the planet and be accessing their data and being productive. And that use case two, now I've got a lot more data, and I'm not just building, you know, one subset of design, but I may need to load the whole car or front loader or whatever. And in this case, most of the PLM systems allow for a remote. Many of them will let you have a remote file server, so that you don't have to upload and download the files. And then in the background, it'll do synchronization for you. So I know that, for example, nope, go back. The Team Center does that. I think that Dassault does it too, but that remote file server is actually a cloud instance closer to where you are. Instance number 3 is interesting too. It's done by, as far as I know so far, Autodesk, Oracle, and Team Center, where I could have my SaaS PLM in the cloud, where I'm doing that little change management and project management and stuff. And on the where I have the users, I can have a local PDM server. So if you look at Autodesk, you can have Autodesk Lifecycle, Fusion Lifecycle in the cloud, and you can have an Autodesk Vault server on premises that's doing all the PDM management for you. In the case of Oracle, you can have Agile on premise and use their Oracle product lifecycle in the cloud. And in Team Center, it's pretty interesting too, because in Team Center, you could actually federate instances of Team Center, multiple instances all the way down to the product and the file. And so that's a pretty interesting use case too, where cloud can really help to federate different instances, which was incredibly difficult to do with on-premises PLM. And lastly, the last use case is just going from cloud to cloud. So if the customer is using an ERP in the cloud or a CRM in the cloud, since nearly all of, if not all of the SaaS vendors and PLM have REST interfaces, we talked about those on other calls, representational state transfer. It's a way of doing input and output and through between two different programs, just using the web, using URLs. That makes it very easy to actually connect multiple clouds. And I think we talked about it last time, Simon, but the thing is that thinking about moving everything to the cloud definitively is probably not very realistic, because at one point you may need, for many reasons, economical or whatever, to bring it back. And so it's always good to have at least some footprint on premise, even while you're trying to expand. Ultimately, most payments that go cloud, if they're not for a short-term small project, will be a hybrid kind of situation.
Okay, all right, fantastic. That's good. It's good. So the next point we're going to touch on is something that I've found quite interesting when I've been talking to people, professionals in the industry, because obviously there's a lot of updates. The platforms are changing all the time, so the training of staff's a huge thing. And how's training going to benefit people when they're moving their PLM systems to the cloud?
So training is obviously one of the very, very important, because users are, used to, in many cases, just using Excel or Office tools. And so you need to get them versant in the new PLM system rather quickly. The great thing about the cloud is it means you don't need classrooms, right? You can do the virtual classrooms in the cloud without needing a VPN and stuff. There are, of course, Dassault has done that with their companion product. Other vendors as well have their cloud training. There is one partner that I really like, though, called SharePLM. Helena and Miriam and Beatrice, they're all fantastic. And they do training where they'll build a training for you so that you can onboard your users really easily. And so they'll basically walk you through the steps of how the different user personas are going to use your system. And then they'll build the training around that, so it's really easy. And again, the advantage there is that you don't need to install anything on premises, that you are just using, the users don't necessarily have to be sitting in a classroom. They can be accessing it from home, because they're in confinement or whatever. So I think this is another really useful thing about the cloud that frees us up to get users more proficient in the systems more quickly.
Fantastic. And this next bit we're going to talk about is
had a lot of success with a lot of PLM. I urge folks to contact PLM.
So the next part we're going to talk about is production environments and specific non-production environments. So production environments can generally be quite complicated. So would companies benefit from having their PLM system on the cloud when considering outages that could hinder potentially production?
There you go. Yes, actually, that's another really good case, I think. I think that, by the way, I'm seeing the questions that are popping up. We'll do a Q&A at the end of the presentation, but I'm seeing them, don't worry. In terms of non-production environments, it's another powerful thing about the cloud. We'll talk a little bit about flexible pricing later that will have an impact on this as well. But if you think about the cost of deploying a PLM system, and then if you need disaster recovery because there's some kind of natural disaster, you lose the primary site, you don't want to lose all your IP as well. But you don't necessarily want to lease another building and lease more machines and do all that management. The cloud does provide a way, and vendors like Azure, I'm showing an example here from Azure. AWS does a similar thing. You can have systems where the cloud can hold a replica of your data center in virtual machines, so that in the daily case, you can at least get a backup. And in the catastrophic case, you could pick up the environment and run it perhaps in a less performant mode, but you could actually still run the environment if your primary site was down. Similarly, non-production environments like development environments are great for developers can be offshore, nearshore, onshore, all working on a similar system without having to pass through VPNs and so forth and so on. So I think that there's also a lot of benefits there to look at in terms of leverage to the cloud in order to optimize your IT investment.
Fantastic. And a lot of the time, a lot of projects that go on these days, in many industries and specifically in PLM as well, happen globally. They have teams around the world who'll be working on different elements of projects, and surely that's going to having your PLM system on the cloud is going to benefit you in terms of that.
Right. So, I think that I remember in our poll, the supply collaboration thing came up. And of course, when you have an on-premises system, supply chain collaboration is always an issue because of, again, access to the data. How do you make sure that people, how do you add these internal VPNs to people that you don't necessarily know who they are? How do you how closely can you get them to your system to be sufficient and yet not be a security risk? And so the cloud is ideal for that because it allows you to have the data up in the cloud and not have to risk the integrity of your data center. Most of the modern PLM systems have different supply chain solutions. I wanted to highlight here, particularly Eurostep, which is a really interesting company based in Sweden. And they have I talked to them a couple of times. There'll be a future webinar where we'll have about a 30-minute conversation with two of the guys at Eurostep. And they told me of this company called Weta that makes these really cool little robots for cleaning a pool. And in this case, there was like 60 or 70 suppliers. Now, you don't necessarily want to open up your entire system, and you don't necessarily want to put your entire system on the cloud either. What you want to do is put the set of data on the cloud that you're going to collaborate on, and then allow with enough security access so that people can do their jobs without compromising each other. And also, different suppliers that are maybe bidding for the same part aren't able to see. So Eurostep, which is the to basically pull subsets of the data and they map it into their own database, and they allow you to do this collaboration with security all the way down to the attribute level. So you can really, you can have access control to granular level in order to allow that collaboration without compromising on security or on performance. So if you have some supply chain issues, I would and you're not, and these are for projects that can be really huge. Their customers they regularly compete with the PTCs, the DASOs, and for these kinds of processes. So the product actually is space. And so I think that's one of the more exciting products in this area.
All right, fantastic. Cheers for now. So, and another point is, so high performance computers, computing is really expensive. Wouldn't it be another benefit to some of these high level doing some of these high level calculations on the cloud, rather than sort of resourcing them from within your internal teams?
Absolutely. So that's another part of cloud computing that's incredibly useful, is elastic and burst computing, because indeed the machines you need to do really high-end calculations of computational fluid dynamics, finite element analysis, electromagnetic analysis, vibration analysis. These can be really humongous machines that cost an absolute fortune. And these days, folks don't really want to do that. Or you might have smaller companies that can't afford it, but still would like the benefits of simulation regardless. So, PTC has connections with ANSYS. Dassault has their Simulia portfolio, which I'll address in a second. And Siemens has, they rebranded all of their software as an accelerator. And so there's, inside the Teamcenter universe, you have the Teamcenter simulation or SimCenter. And with this, you can actually manage the data that's coming back from the simulations in your Teamcenter X, but you can actually push the bigger calculations into the cloud, so that you're only paying per use on the calculations. And then you're taking advantage of the fact that the cloud can have, you can basically have thousands of CPUs at your disposition and petabytes of memory without actually having to make that investment. So yeah, it's I think for the moment at Siemens, they have this STAR CCM, which if I recall correctly is a computational fluid dynamics software. Very quickly to bring the rest of their portfolio online. But I was just going to mention, because it's in my white paper as well, that Dassault recently moved from, added, they used to have a token-based system where you had to pay for tokens which were usable but didn't include the hardware. So you would have to put the tokens up front, which you may or may not use, and then you had to go find the hardware in order to run it. And so doing that on cloud was not to say incredibly expensive. And they just recently created what they call compute credits. So you buy a bucket of these credits and you consume them with your calculations, but it includes the hardware already. So it makes it much easier to do calculations on the cloud. So expect that all these vendors are going to move in this direction to take advantage of cloud and the elastic and burst computing capabilities. And initially probably for analytics, for simulation data, but I think this is also going to come in for manufacturing simulation, for deep analytics. I think a lot of the things where we need really heavy calculation power, that we're going to see more and more use of elastic and burst computing. Oh, AI, of course, AI, blockchain, anything like that as well could be used.
Lovely. And how about when you're designing things and you need new functions on your platform? Is having your PLM platform on the cloud, are you able to add new functions in fairly quickly?
Actually, I think that's another advantage as well. Several of the platforms like Teamcenter X, because of their acquisition of Mindex. Mindex has an app store, so you can actually buy apps on the fly and add them to your platform, which on premises was always more than problematic, because you'd had to change the whole production system. Because of all these new technologies around REST, you don't actually have to touch the data model. You can just add new functionality. PTC has and I was just showing an example here of Core 8. So Core 8 is called Postal Logic. They're a vendor that does digital document management. And they have some solutions where you can add functionality. You see some of the things here around document conversion, transmittal management, digital signatures, which makes it really easy to add these capabilities on the cloud without having to take months and months of deployment time away from the project. So yeah, I think that it's the flexibility of these newer technologies that have come with the cloud. It's not necessarily the cloud itself, but the fact that we're adopting REST infrastructures and low-code systems that's allowing us to add this functionality without calling into question the entire PLM deployment, which we would have had to do in the past.
Of course. And something that was prevalent on the poll was flexible pricing. And in previous webinars, we've also discussed pricing in different PLM vendors. So having the PLM on the cloud, does that allow for a more flexible pricing?
I believe it does. I think that what's interesting is that up to now, and for a lot of customers today, even if they're using, people are, I think we talked earlier about hybrid models where a lot of people are using a PLM on premise, and then they'll start a smaller project on the cloud with the idea of eventually moving things to the cloud. But they're still paying for that hardware on premises, right? They're still paying an upfront cost and then a maintenance cost and stuff. I'm showing an example here. This is an example from Hewlett Packard Enterprise, or HPE. I believe that Fujitsu and some other hardware vendors have a similar thing. Well, Green Lake is this series of products from HP, which allows you to actually pay for on-premises for a pay as or what you use system. So you have the hardware on site, but you're only paying for the CPU cycles and memory and storage that you actually consume. They are also directly connected to the cloud provider of your choice. So if you decide to move a particular project or a particular set of VMs onto the cloud, that makes it incredibly easy to do so. If you need to move them back, it's easy to move them back. If you decide, well, I don't like this anymore, I want to go back to just paying for the hardware, you can do that too. And so I think that makes it much easier for CIOs as well, because they can kind of rationalize their cost a bit as the business evolves. And again, the benefit there is just that you can actually, again, not have these sunk costs in hardware and still get the latest, greatest hardware and still take advantage of the cloud all at the same time. So that's pretty exciting stuff.
Okay, lovely. And so, I mean, the majority of this afternoon so far, we've talked about infrastructure. And today, one of the buzzwords and something that people mention a lot to myself is digital thread. And we've not really covered that much. Is there a benefit for having your digital thread on the cloud?
I believe so, yes. This is a slide I got off of PTC, which I thought was an interesting one, because it shows you sort of the digital thread and the digital twin at the same time. Because if you think about it, on the top of the slide, you have the physical world of sensors and products and things we're going to model in the digital world, right? Which are the twins that are on the bottom of the slide. And what the cloud does is, first of all, because the cloud is not physically located, well, it's accessible from anywhere. All that physical hardware, when you're in an IoT situation plus manufacturing, those things are all can be connected into your cloud instance. And then the digital side, all these systems, particularly on the huge PLM vendors like Dassault, PTC, and Siemens, they've already got that entire portfolio all connected together, right? So you've already got this continuity of the digital thread, plus you're able with the cloud to connect it to physical devices through edge computing. And so that does allow you to have this overall picture from cradle to grave, from inception of the idea all the way to the serviceability of it. And that all can be managed with the cloud. And that helps because you don't have to pull a file out of the system, print it out, walk over to another desk, give it to somebody, because it's all in the cloud and it's all digitalized. It makes it much easier to see the handoffs, the approval processes, and it keeps everything in line. So I think that there's a really good argument that a good use, a consistent use of cloud computing with an on-premise backup, as we talked about, can really enhance the digital thread and push you out to some of these next generation ideas that they show here on the slide, like blockchain and AI, because those things are relatively difficult to do on-prem. And besides there, we talked about HPE can go off into Azure cloud. A lot of another advantage, and it also talks to the plugins that we talked about, is that Amazon and have huge amounts of services already built into the cloud, IoT, managing domains, and a lot of the vendors, I mentioned Eurostep, they're an example, actually leverage that stuff so they don't have to write it in-house, right? Which is another big advantage of the cloud, is that you can leverage technology that's already been tested and verified by somebody else and then add it to your own platform. And that, again, I would argue that contributes to having a digital thread that's continuous and uninterrupted.
Fantastic. Cheers, Fino. Thank you. So that's pretty much what we're gonna kind of cover today. So we're gonna pop you another poll now as well. So given the sort of benefits of moving PLM to the cloud, what do you guys feel would be the most likely to sway you in doing so?
Areas that we want, right?
So just while everyone's answering, we've got a couple of more. We've got another episode coming up in a couple of weeks, which we're going to be talking about the future talent landscape in PLM. So that'll be Fino talking to myself about sort of resourcing it and what the talent market's like in the PLM world. And then we're going to be doing a couple more episodes after that as well. Which is going to involve some interviews and Fino covering some SaaS platforms, the future of PLM on the cloud again, but going into a bit more detail, sort of artificial intelligence, etc. Just got a few more people to wait to answer on the poll.
I'd just like to interject because we didn't have time to add a poll. If you guys wouldn't mind in the comments, let me know what you think about the format. You know, I thought that 30 minutes is about the attention span these days for a web. As long as they're too short, do appreciate the fact that we're also giving you the content in podcasts and on YouTube. Are these the right ways? Because you know, we just want to make sure we're giving you the content in the best way possible. So we just wanted your feedback on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So it looks like the pricing was one of the more interesting ones. That's cool. Very good. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the input. Do we have some questions? Let me see if I can see the questions here.
So I'll get them up.
I don't see any questions. Oops, sorry. Chat. Okay, so from Louis Aslam, he asked whether training will ever go back to the classroom or it'll just be virtual. I would say that I think it depends on the training, right? I think that when you're talking about user onboarding training, I think that that's pretty easy to do virtually, right? I don't, you know, it doesn't make sense to be sitting. However, like I used to do a lot of classes on architecture when I was at PTC and when I was at DASO, and things that are really, really technical where you really need the teacher there to mention and to give you hard examples. I mean, those can be done virtually. It's some of those kinds of classes, or classes where you need to work in a team to solve a problem. Those kinds of classes are still going to be. Eventually, we'll go to once this current crisis passes, I think. So I'd say, yeah, we'll eventually go in the classroom, but it'll probably be different. It'll probably be more hands-on and more the onboarding kinds of things into the cloud. That's what I would say. Any other questions? That's the only one I saw. Did you guys see some other ones? In the Q&A section here. Hector asked about BIM 360. Yes, of course. Well, BIM 360 from Autodesk is basically the same exact thing as Fusion Lifecycle. It's the same platform. It's just aimed at the construction industry rather than the other smaller industries, medical devices and manufacturing that they try to cover at Autodesk. So yeah, it's definitely one. In fact, I was talking to Mark Halpern, and we were talking about the fact that that's a direction where kind of interestingly so far. And indeed, what's interesting about the construction market is it's very close to the shipbuilding market, right? It's not that hard to build a ship. It's just a bunch of rooms copied over and over again. What's difficult is the piping, the air conditioning, the water, electricity. Those things are the most difficult, the most complicated, and those are the kinds of problems that PLM was designed. VK was asking about options of import and export of data to the cloud. Yeah, we talked about it a couple of times. That there's most of the platforms allow you some kind of an import, and so as you're migrating data, you can be importing. Of course, the issue is bandwidth and latency to get the data into the cloud, which is not always easy. So up to now, a lot of people have either only started smaller projects on the cloud, or maybe used an on-prem cloud like in Azure, and then pushed that data out once it was complete into the cloud. I think the more interesting question, which we talked about the last time as well, is around the getting out of the cloud, like the problem of vendor lock-in, right? Because someday if you need to get out, you need to export your data. So I think that's a concern. Most of the vendors I talked to had at least something there that, yeah, you can get your data out. But I would definitely be careful with the T's and C's, the terms and conditions, and signing a deal to make sure that that was really a reality, because there could be a really sticky point at some point. If you needed to get out and you can't, that's going to cause a lot of frustration and could lead to lawsuits. So again, most of the platforms will claim that they can do export data, but I would just make sure contractually that that's part of your deal with them. So I hope that answered the question.
Cheers for now. So if you've got any more questions, guys, please do pop them in the Q&A function at the bottom. So we'll give you another minute or two.
Well, overall, I mean, are you guys happy with the content? Is it technical enough? Is it not technical enough? It's just hard since we can't put everybody live because it becomes unmanageable on Zoom. I just want to make sure that we're giving you the right content. I hope you guys will, again, come back for episode 4, because we'll be talking to, I'll be interviewing Haigandco. So we're turning the desk around and talking to Haigandco about the talent landscape. In other words, the job market. How is the job market of PLM impacted by cloud, which changes the skills required for PLM, as well as how is COVID impacting how you do interviews? That'll help. Also, on this last slide, I just wanted to point out that there is, if you go in your Apple podcast, there is a 2 Cloud Proud channel. So you can get your favorite episodes of Simon and I talking about PLM, as well as some other bonus content as a podcast. And all these are on my YouTube channel as well. So we'll be sending you those links. Thanks, Andrew. So Andrew likes the content. That's good.
Yeah, cheers, Hector.
Well, great. If there's nothing, good. Any other questions?
No other questions. Hector just said it was comprehensive.
Fantastic. Well, we hope so. And I think that the next time would be really interesting. And then after that, we'll be, again, talking more in detail of the vendor solutions themselves and interviewing the vendors. So I've already got Deso lined up. I've got Propel. I'll be talking to guys from Siemens. So we'll have lots of interesting discussions with the vendors going forward as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, we've got some exciting stuff to come up.
So the 2 Cloud Proud, we wanted to say thank you so much for attending today. And we hope to see you guys next time in a couple of weeks.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much indeed.